Ronny Jackson in person.
Yes, sir.
Busy fellow.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so we always have a lot of things to talk about, but you know what's uppermost in everybody's mind, because you just come back from overseas,
right,
to see that the local media is all over this story.
And not just the local media, national media
And
too,
the national media,
right?
yeah, that's where I first started seeing it, and then then lo and behold, I get all these bulletins popping up on my phone from the local stations.
Yep.
And they've got video cam, and there's some things that happened that there's some things that happen that you're disgusted about. There's other things that happen that you regret. I want you just to say what you want to say.
Sure. Well, Ricky, one of the reasons I wanted to come in is I just wanted to tell you, I wanted a venue to do this, and your show's just a perfect one. But I just wanted to tell everybody I wanted to come in today because I want to apologize, because I know I let some people down with my language I used on that video. So that's not representative of the people I represent in the 13th Congressional District. It's not representative of who I am. It's not the way I want to be perceived. And so when the video came out, I knew that that I had I had to use some language that I didn't wasn't going to be pleased that was going to be put out on that video. That was the only reason I didn't want the video to come out. Otherwise, I'm glad the video came out, because it kind of demonstrates a lot of what happened that night. But I do regret the language I used. I do apologize for that, but I don't regret anything else that happened that night, and I don't apologize for anything else that happened that night, because the honest to God truth is that I was trying to do my best to help a little 15-year-old girl who was having a medical emergency, and I can tell you the whole story, kind of how it all went. I don't know how much you want to go into this, but I'm happy to talk about what happened.
I think people want to hear what happened.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I mean, I went to the rodeo at White Deer that night, and I start off by saying that the folks in White Deer are fantastic. They invited me to the rodeo there. I got some good friends in White Deer and Carson County. A lot of great folks. The people in Carson County are just like the people I grew up with in Hockley County, and just like the people that I represent in the other 38 counties. Used to be 41, now 38 counties here in the 13th Congressional District. Some of the the most patriotic, best Americans that we have to offer, that this country has to offer, and I'm really proud to represent them. So this has nothing to do with anything negative against anybody that lives in that area, because they are the people that I represent that are just like I am, and that's why I think I do a good job of representing the folks in the 13th Congressional District, because I'm one of them. I grew up in the same area, and I had the same the same concerns, the same beliefs, and I feel like I identify. But anyways, so I was invited to the rodeo that night. I went to the rodeo, and I had my family there with me. My district director, who's here today, Christy Morrow, was also with me. We sit in the rodeo for the entire time we got there before it started. I sit right in the front, the entire rodeo. I never got up to go to the bathroom or anything. Sit there the entire time. The rodeo was over. They had a concert after the rodeo. So we stuck around for that for a little bit, and during the concert, I was not really up near the stage area. I was kind of in the back. That it had an area where they were selling merchandise and stuff for the performer there. I was kind of back in that area, and I was back there with my son and my wife, and then some of the folks that had invited us were just back there talking. And somebody ran up to me and they said, "Hey, Dr. Jackson, we need your help right away. There's a little girl who's had a seizure." So someone came and got me and told me, "Please come help. There's a medical emergency." So I went over. And as soon as I walked up, I saw this young girl. I guess, it turns out she was 15 years old. She was just lying on her back, and there were a couple people around her. So I walked up, and two people were kind of attending to her already. It turns out it was two nurses, one that was related to her and one that wasn't. But one, I think, was an ICU nurse, and the other one is also a nurse. They were both attending to her. So I walked up, and I didn't say anything about who I was or anything else. I just said, "Hey, I'm an ER doc. Do you guys need some help?" And they said, "Absolutely." So I bent down, and apparently this is, you can see from the video, the little girl had been there for 15 minutes before I even arrived, because the video video starts when one of these state troopers had a body cam video, and he started, of course, so you watch 15 minutes of the video where the little girl's laying there. There's no medical providers at all except for these two nurses. There's no EMS there at all. And so if you go back and look at the nurses that were there said she was there for some period of time before that even started, before the DPS arrived. So this little girl had been lying there on the ground for a full 20 minutes before EMS ever even arrived. And I arrived at about I think probably the 14 minute mark or something on the video. But like I said, she'd been lying there prior to the video even starting. And I just kneeled down. And one of the nurses, I guess, had already sent somebody out to her car. I guess she had a blood pressure cuff or something in her car. Because when I got there, they were the nurse was putting a blood pressure cuff on her arm. She was awake. But she wasn't responsive really. She was just staring into space. There was obviously something had happened to her. She was not normal. She was still whatever was going on was still happening. She probably had a seizure, to be honest with you, and maybe she was in this postictal phase. I don't know, but so I just reached down. I checked her pulse and I checked her respirations, and they checked her blood pressure, and her blood pressure was fine. I was trying to talk to her. She wasn't responding to anything. She was just staring just straight ahead. Wouldn't respond to anything, and that's about as far as it got, to be honest with you. I had, we were talking about, well, could this be, post seizure? Could this be? And I was asking, does anybody know anything about her medical history? Does she have diabetes? Does she take insulin? As this happened before, and no one was there really had much to add with regards to her medical history. So we were just talking about that, and I said, well, it could be hypoglycemia, could be this, could be that, and that was about the time that all of a sudden. And it was loud there. There was a concert going in the background. You can even hear on the video how loud it was. It was pretty chaotic. And, in their defense, I know that but this was when things started to go wrong, because this was when the law enforcement officers that were involved in this rolled into this like it was a fight or something. It was a medical emergency, but they approached this situation as if it were a fight or something. And the first officer that engaged me, I was bent down, and you can see on the video I was bent down. And this officer it was a DPS officer, and he rushes into me, and he starts screaming in my face, and he pushes me back. And then the two deputies you can see in the video grabbed me by the arms and stood me up. So I stood up and I backed up, you can say there's no EMS there at all when this happens. No EMS providers. That's about the time that you see the stretcher come in from the side. They were, I guess, trying to clear a path from the other side, on the opposite side of where I was at, to get the stretcher in. But when he came in, he pushed the nurse off, and I didn't see what happened over there. She said that that someone punched her in the chest and palmed her face and pushed her backwards. They came over the top of the patient and pushed me back and stood me up. And then after there's about a minute that goes by, and they throw this little girl on the stretcher, which, honestly, I'm not, trying to, criticize too much here, but I can't tell the story without criticizing some. But they threw this little girl on the stretcher, and she apparently had a seizure and fallen down. And I didn't see them put her on the stretcher, but there's been multiple witnesses that were standing just feet away, two of which came out yesterday and gave their recorded testimony or eyewitness account of what happened to myhighplains.com, I think it was, in one of the TV stations, might have been News Channel 10, where they have the audio recorded of them calling in and telling exactly what happened from beginning to end. It's exactly the way I said. But they were horrified at what happened. They were horrified at the way that they punched this woman in the chest, palmed her, pushed her back, came over the top, pushed me off of the patient. But that's when I stood up, and then you can see once they throw her on the stretcher, and they're not no C-spine precautions or anything. Apparently she'd fallen, she had a seizure, and they should have been, making sure that she didn't injure her neck or anything, but they just chunked her on the stretcher and whisked her away. This was like a minute on the tape. You can see the stretcher come in, you can see the stretcher leave, and then she's gone, and it should be over at that point. But that's when this highway patrol officer comes over the top of where the patient was to me, where I was standing up, and just got right in my face. And, I should have probably at that point let it go. But what happened is, he just got right in my face, and he said, you MF, do you understand me? I tell you to get back. You better effing get back. And he was just going crazy, right in my face. And so then basically, that's at that point was whenever I don't know if he gave a nod or what happened or whatever, but the two deputies, which I didn't even know were still behind me, standing behind me, grabbed me and just drove me to the ground.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they injured my ankle in the process. I've been limping around on my ankle for 2 weeks. They tore some ligaments in my ankle, and it was all swollen. I couldn't walk on it the whole time I was overseas recently. And they drove me to the ground, and one of them, had their knee in my back of my head. The other one had their knee in the back of my back. And they pulled my arm behind me, cuffed one arm, and they were like yelling at me, screaming and cursing at me. Give me your other arm. I was totally complied. I gave them my other arm. They cuffed me, and then they stood me up. And that's when I just kind of lost my temper, And then they walked me like probably 50, 75 yards through the crowd while I was handcuffed to the back, and then took the handcuffs off of me, and then began to basically try to justify what they'd done and apologize or whatever. And that's when I just got overwhelmed. I got pretty emotional because I got just so angry when I realized that here I am trying to help this 15-year-old girl. I get, like I said, they rolled into this thing like it was a fight. And I found out, quite honestly, from people that were at the rodeo before the rodeo started, and the rodeo had happened the night before previously, that this particular officer, the one that started this whole thing, had been telling people that he thought white deer was boring, and he was hoping it would be exciting tonight. He was hoping they'd get a runner or something exciting would happen. So this police officer rolled into this situation looking for trouble. He was looking for it, right? And the sheriff's deputies were all too eager to just to participate. So when they walked me out, they took the handcuffs off, and that's when I kind of lost my cool, and I just lost it, and that's when I regret the language I used, but I don't regret the fact that I got upset. But I told
was there not one single one of those officers that knew who you were?
I guess I don't know. Well, Christy was my district director here, and she was trying to explain to them the entire time this was happening, but I don't think anybody was ignoring. And every time you mentioned, that like, well, he's an ER doctor, and then Christy was saying, well, he's a congressman, he's an ER doc. The response was the same. I don't give a F who he is, and they were just screaming and yelling. I mean, they were over the top aggressive, and so at that point I was just so when they took the handcuffs off of me in the back, which is only I was only handcuffed for a short period of time, a couple of minutes, and they took them off of me, and then they immediately started trying to apologize, like, well, hey, we're sorry, this, that, and the other, but, you need to comply with somebody. And they were saying, multiple people told you to get back and you didn't get back. That's a complete lie. No one told me to get back except for that officer. And it was when he came over the top of that patient to start with, and then he came over a second time and got in my face after the patient was gone. That was the only person I had any interaction with who had told me to get back. And I got back, but he got super aggressive. I was just trying to explain to him, like, oh, I'm an ER doc. I'm trying to help, because there was no EMS providers there at the time, right? But he didn't care. He let me know he didn't care. He's like, I don't give a F who you are. You better on. And he just was going after me. So
that does not compute with me why they would do that. Normally in a situation
I don't know.
You're going. If somebody says I'm a board certified ER doctor, you're going to say, oh, I'm glad you're here. What can we do to help you?
Well, they started trying to make excuses for it when once they took the handcuffs off me, and they started apologizing. And one of the sheriff's deputies, the female sheriff's deputy that was there, she was saying, she was going, we had to get you off her get you away from her because the parents didn't want you near her. Well, guess what? The parents weren't there, right? There were no parents there. And if you want, I can read you this. I got an email the very next morning. The first thing that I got right off the morning was a note from her father. Right?
Okay.
And I'll just read you the note. And I'm not going to mention his name, but it says, hello, Mr. Jackson. This is such and such, the father of the girl you helped at the White Deer Rodeo. I tried calling you to tell you how appreciative I am for what you have done for my daughter and how sorry I am for the way you were treated for doing so. The way you were treated was completely unacceptable and unprofessional. If you need anything at all from me, you have my full support. As a man and a father, I am truly grateful for what you did for my daughter. Words cannot explain how truly grateful I am, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. That was from her father. And, this police officer was trying to say one of the reasons that they were so aggressive with me and detained me was because the parents, the father and the mother, didn't want me there. They weren't there, right? So that was just,
So you made that up.
Yeah, they totally made that up. And then they published, and see, to be honest with you, Ricky, I was not going to spin this up at all. I was just going to let this go to some extent.
Yeah.
I had talked to DPS, and, and I talked to, and DPS was very good about this, to be honest with you. I just want to say that, even though it was the DPS officer that kind of engaged and started this whole thing, when I talked to leadership in DPS, they were like, look, we're very sorry this happened. We apologize. We'll do anything you want to investigate this or look into this or whatever. But we're certainly willing to handle this ourselves. And I said, you know what? I don't want you to do anything. I want you to handle this the way you see fit, right? I'm not, I told DPS, I said, I appreciate what you guys do. You guys are doing the Lord's work at the border. officer. You're down there, working hard on our border, putting your lives on the line. I have a lot of respect for the Department of Public Safety. I think they're some of the most professional police officers I've ever been around, and I've been around a lot working at the White House for 14 years. I worked with law enforcement all over the planet, and certainly all over the United States. And I would say the Secret Service is probably at the very top of that list, and DPS is right there with them. They've been very professional, in every interaction I've ever had with them. So DPS, kind of, I think, did the right thing. They said, we're sorry this happened. It was a misunderstanding. It was a chaotic environment. Our officer may have done some stuff that he shouldn't have done. He may have been too aggressive, and we will take care of that. We will look into that. We will handle that. And I was perfectly fine with that. The problem I have, and then I went away and I was like, okay, well, we're just going to, we'll see. I didn't want it to spin up any more cam video out there, and I didn't really want to spin it up anymore. I didn't want any of that to come out because, it was going to be hard for me to come in here and sit across from you. It was going to be hard for me to go to church, and it was going to be hard for me to explain to my mother, my language, because, she's, she was, that's not the way I was raised.
Right.
But, but despite that, what happened is, like I said, I think the DPS, acted appropriately after the fact. But this sheriff's department, I don't know. Like I said, I have nothing against people in Carson County. They're fine people, and I respect all of them. But honestly, I can't defend some of this stuff. And this sheriff and his family have been outspoken opponents of mine since before my first election.
Really?
They were very aggressive online. And,
was he there that night?
No, he was there, but he wasn't at the scene. It was just his deputies. Anyways, they insisted on continue to spin this up. So I went away on this trip overseas for 10 days. Yeah. I came back, and they had really pushed releasing the video, which they did. Wow. They put out a 17 to 20 page sheriff's report, which was full of just factual misstatements. I'll just say lies.
I read nearly all of that. Yeah. And you have 4 or 5 different law enforcement people that wrote their statements, but they could have just Xeroxed it. In other words, they colluded together. I'm expressing my opinion here.
No, I agree.
That they're covering for each other. Yeah. They said, now we're all on the same page here. We're going to say this and this and this, as if it's all separate.
Here's the thing, Ricky. They it's not an investigation per se. They didn't interview any witnesses that were there, and there were witnesses that were there, and they didn't bother to get any statements from the people who actually saw what happened at the very beginning. Yeah. They have this audio of him coming over the top when he started the whole thing, being super aggressive. Right? They left that out, but there are multiple witnesses that were standing there that I don't even know. I mean, I don't know these witnesses. The ones that called into myhighplains.com, into the TV station. As far as I know, I've never met those folks before. But they had enough of what they were seeing online, and they said, this is just unbelievable. And they called in, and they said, that's not what happened. Dr. Jackson was doing the right thing. He was trying his best to help this little girl, and law enforcement was 100% inappropriate. And quite frankly, the way the patient was treated from EMTs there initially when they got there was also inappropriate, and they were upset about that as well. So they gave their statement at that. But there were other people. There were 3 or 4 other people I know, at least 4 or 5 other people probably, that also saw what happened. The sheriff's department didn't try to get statements from any of them. What they did is they took statements from the 4 or 5 officers that were involved in what happened, right? The ones that were potentially going to be implicated in inappropriate actions, right? And they got together, like you said, and they collaborated. They came up with, and they tried everything they could, including making false statements in their statements, right? They said, at one point they were saying that my wife was there, that my wife was one of the nurses. My wife wasn't there. My wife was at the rodeo with me, but she wasn't there. She was off over in the area where I initially came from. Christy had walked over with me, and my son had walked over with me, but my wife wasn't there. And and they said basically they had made some comment. Well, just because they want to justify, they're trying to justify their actions, so they're putting anything in there they can to justify their actions. Hence, they put in there that the parents had asked me had asked them to get me away from their daughter. That didn't happen. They put in there that I had been drinking. That was an absolute.
That's one of that to me, and watching the video was a very important point with me.
Yeah, it was
because
garbage.
People kept saying, well, he was drunk. Well, if you watch that video, you can see that's obviously not true.
I can promise you I wasn't. And I can tell you, like I said before, just, right before that happened, before the concert started, there was some time frame, between the end of the rodeo and the concert, but it wasn't that long before this all happened. I was sitting in full view of every single person at the rodeo in the stands, and and I wasn't drinking I wasn't drinking beer or anything else. I was just sitting there in the stands, and I never even got up to go to the bathroom. So it's pretty well documented what I was doing for the 2+ hours before this happened. When I was in the rodeo, and so anyways, but they did that because they're just, it plays
makes
into
their
the
story
narrative.
sound more plausible.
It makes their story sound. If you're law enforcement and you're getting accused of being overly aggressive, what are you going to say? You're going to say, well, we got him away from there because the parents had told us they didn't want him around their daughter. He was obviously he looked like he was drinking and drunk, and he was. They're going to say whatever they can come up with to justify their actions. You can't be justified, and that's why I say I really regret the language that I used in the video, and I apologize profusely for that. That's not going to happen again. And so like I said, I just don't have any respect at this particular point for the sheriff and for the deputies that were involved in this. And I think that it's politically motivated. I think they saw what happened, and they were salivating, thinking this is an opportunity to bring this guy down and to damage his reputation, which they would be all too happy to do because they like I said, have been opponents of mine since the very beginning. And I think that they pursued it in large part for that reason. I'm not going to apologize for anything else because I think I acted completely appropriate with the exception of losing my temper a little bit. Yeah. But considering the situation, when I started thinking about the fact that they basically, forcibly tackled me, drove me to the ground, put their elbows and their knees in my back and in my head, handcuffed me, picked me up, and perp walked me through a number of my constituents that I have relationships with. When I think about that, I just lost my temper. And I should have restrained myself a little bit more, but I couldn't help it. I was very upset, and I let them know that I was upset. And people were like, "Oh, you said you're going to call the governor." You dang right, I said I was going to call the governor because look. Those deputies worked for the sheriff, but that DPS officer worked for the governor. That was his boss, right? So, I said I'm going to call your boss, and I'm going to call your boss. I'm going to call the governor, and I'm going to call the sheriff, and I did both. So.
Well, frankly, I expect DPS officers to be more professional, shall we say, than maybe a local small town deputy.
And I think the DPS would agree with you on that as well. And they weren't really pleased with that part of it. But I will tell you that I do want to say that I think DPS was very responsive, and I think DPS is trying to do the right thing. And I think that they are professional law enforcement officers, and this is not at all representative or indicative of your typical DPS officer.
I will share this with you. I told Christy that I said I appreciate the apology, and I said I'm sure he also apologized to God, and she said yes he did, and she said he also apologized to me, and told me very I don't think she used the word passionately, but very strongly that you never ever wanted to put her in a position of such discomfort as what that causes. But on the other hand, we understand the anger.
Yeah.
But here's something you posted on Facebook. You said, I will not apologize for sparing no effort to help in a medical emergency, especially when the circumstances were chaotic and the local authorities refused to help the situation. I was prevented from giving medical care in a potentially life-threatening situation due to overly aggressive and incompetent actions by the local authorities present at the time of the incident. I was not drinking, and again, I was asked to help the teenager when no other uniformed medics were present. I am a trained ER physician. I heard you say on the video, board certified.
Correct.
And, of course, we know you were personal physician to 3 presidents of the United States. So this is, I mean, you're not somebody that just walked off the street and said, well, I used to work in the ER a little bit here and there, but.
And I will say one of the deputies made the comment, well, he's not certified in Texas, which is true. I'm not. I had a Virginia license and a Florida license, but that would imply that if you're a board certified emergency medicine physician, I'm board certified by the American Board of Emergency Medicine, right? Yeah. And then you have a state license. Most doctors have a license in one state, not 50 states, whatever state they practice in. So that would imply that if you were board certified in Virginia, that you would stop to assist someone in distress in Virginia, but if you were in any of the other 49 states, you would just keep keep walking, right? That's that's not the way we operate. That's not the way anybody in the medical field operates, and that's not. There's good Samaritan laws that that basically and just the oath that you take if someone's in extremis and someone's in a medical having a medical emergency and you're there, you should render assistance, right?
Well, sure,
and that's what I did, and so they're just like I said, trying to come up with all kinds of just justifications and and trying to come after me on 1,000 fronts. But I'll just tell you, it's not really work, to be honest with you, because I've just got overwhelming support from people in this district. I just get emails and text messages all day long, people telling me that they're upset about what happened, and for me to hang in there, that they support me 110%, and and I just it just makes me all that more enthusiastic about just making sure that people in the 13th district get everything they need from me while I'm in Congress. I'm going to give 2,000%, and I've always been that way. But just when something goes wrong, or something is not exactly as you planned, and the people that you represent rally behind you like everyone's rallied behind me, it really makes me feel good.
Ask the congressman if he has any grudge, hard feelings, or plans to pursue charges or retaliation to the sheriff's department, and ask him if he consumed alcohol. So his question goes a little further. He's not asking if you were drunk. He's asking if you had consumed alcohol that evening. So
look, I was not drinking that. I was not drinking, and that's as far as I'm concerned, that's well documented. So no. And then as far as retaliating or anything, that's not. I was completely content to let this go away.
Oh, I know. Christy and Kate were both very concise and guarded, shall I say, in their comments to me when I was asking them on text. They wouldn't say a whole lot.
Right, because I was trying not to spin things up. I was trying not to, to put anybody in a bad position. I was hoping that, that this would be taken care of, by the sheriff and by DPS, which I think, like I said before, I think DPS is doing a fine job on that. Sheriff, not so much. But I think that, the fact that they continue to push this out and continue to, make false statements in their official report or whatever, I felt like I just had no choice but to refute some of this and to correct the record. But I'm not vindictive about this. I'm not there's nothing to this. I mean, this will pass. But I'm just not going to stand by while they make things up and say things that weren't true. I mean, like I said, it's just I have some regrets about the whole thing as well, like I just expressed to you. But
well, we're committed to truth here. We have T-shirts that we sell that says "Speaking Truth." That's one of our slogans right here. I didn't put this on there this morning because you were coming in. This has been here for months. Right. Truth will make you free in 2023. Right. That is one of our main concerns here, is to be truthful. Right. And I'd always tell people I'm correctable and teachable. Yeah. So if you catch me in something that's not exactly right, let me know. Yeah. And I will correct that on the air, because we want to be people that are known for truth as being truth tellers.
And Ricky, one of the things too is I was like, I tell people it's kind of crazy, but if you just step back and look at this from from 1,000 from the 1,000 feet view or whatever, 1,000-foot view, like if this was true, if what they said happened that night was true, if I physically threatened a DPS officer, told him I was going to kick his butt or whatever they said, the thing, if I physically threatened him, if I chest bumped him, if I pushed him, like they said all these other things, if I was drunk, so on and so forth, why would they ever take those handcuffs off of me?
Well, that's right. I mean, that's what Johnny, my PR guys, said over and over the last few days, because he has a son-in-law that works for the Amarillo Police Department. He said they would not take the cuffs off and let a guy go if he's really that angry and that drunk, and and that's just not something they do. Is say, okay. And
you can see in the video, that's why I'm glad the video came out. You can see I'm upset, but you can also see that I'm completely intact as far as my faculties go. I mean, I'm articulate. And
I think the only threat you made, if it can be called a threat, is when you said you were going to see to it that the sheriff is defeated next time around or something.
Yeah, I mean, That, yeah, I mean, I think, I'll be involved in that race probably. I don't think, he's fit to be sheriff. And so, I mean, to the extent that I can, that's up to his constituents in Carson County. That's not up to me.
Yeah.
But I have a relationship with his constituents as well, because they're my constituents too.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that people care about what my opinion is, I'll be happy to give my opinion when the time comes. I don't have a vote in that. And, and I trust the citizens of Carson County, the voters of Carson County to make the right choice. And if they reelect this man, then that's their choice. If they don't, that's their choice. That'll really be up to them.
There's several people, by the way, that I'm very strongly committed to doing everything I can to keep them from being elected next time around.
Yeah.
So certainly looks like this was a setup.
I don't think that's a threat. I think that's a political reality.
That's right.
He can certainly campaiign against me, which he did last time around. So he can campaign against me. I'm sure that he will, and I welcome it. And he did that last time.
We have a firm reliance, as Abe Lincoln said, that truth, how did he say it? With a firm reliance that truth makes might.
Right.
Isn't that the way he said it?
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So this listener says, certainly looks like he was set up for the scene to her. Another listener says, praying for you, Congressman Jackson. And another one says, DPS is not the standard they make themselves out to be. I have seen it. That's from a school teacher. Let's see if there's any other comments on the other phone here. I would never approach or pass by closely during any police action because the police might think it's an ambush situation. I'm a perpetrator. I might watch from a distance with my hands in my pocket to be aware of the optics. Yeah, but see, if you're a board certified emergency room doctor, and people are asking you to help, you're not going to say, oh, no.
Right, and I didn't go over there on my own. I was called over there. I was summoned to the scene. So,
well, I was just like in a situation like that as a preacher. Somebody says, could you come over here and pray for this person? I'm not going to say, oh, no, I'm not going to get involved. I say, yes, sir, I'll be right there.
Right.
Here's a text here from a man that just recently stepped down from being a county judge. He said, thank you, Congressman, for coming on the air and explaining the entire story. David, one of our listeners, says, I believe and receive his honesty and sincerity. These people that are listening to you right now, for the most part, people that are listening to us, they believe in your sincerity.
Well, I appreciate that.
And they believe in your testimony. You've talked to me before on the air here about your commitment to Jesus.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's about the night that you surrendered your life to Him.
Right.
What about these indictments against Trump and nothing against Joe Biden? What do you see as happening as we continue pursuing the route that we're sadly on in this country?
Well, I just think that this last one is just more evidence of to what extreme they'll go to keep Donald Trump from being able to run. They're trying their best to tie him up just physically and financially. They think that if they pile enough stuff on, he won't have the time to campaign, he won't have the money to campaign, and they think that that it will turn people against him, thinking that he's not gonna be electable. But it's doing just the opposite, to be honest with you. In the Republican Party in particular, certainly in the base, it's inspiring people to get behind him and to continue to support him and to go out and ultimately vote for him. He's going to be the nominee for the Republican Party. That is going to happen.
Yeah. Can we win against a rigged election? Are Republicans really doing anything to keep this from happening?
Well, we're trying our best, to be honest with you, Ricky. Though it's difficult because as well as I do that the Constitution leaves the elections and the conduct of the election in the way that the elections are handled up to the states, not to the federal government. So we're pushing, as individual members of Congress from all the states and the Republican side, we're pushing for reforms to the state legislatures and the election laws in the various states. And we're doing a good job of that here in Texas because we have a Republican House and a Republican Senate here in our state government, and they're obviously interested in making sure that Democrats don't fraudulently steal elections. Other states that also have Republican legislatures are making progress in this, but unsolicited mail-in ballots, and they can change the rules of where you can vote and when you can vote, and and who can witness what's happening, and all these kinds of things that are controlled at the state level that I think were part of the problem last time, were led to a fraudulent election last time. A lot of those are still in place, so we're going to try to do that. I think I've said this before. I mean, the immediate answer is to get out in such overwhelming numbers that they just can't fraudulently take the election away from us this time. And I think we did that to some extent last time. I mean, there was record numbers of voters, and never had that many Republicans come out and voted ever. And so I think we have to do that and then some this next time coming up. But I also think that we have to adopt. I'm going to just be honest with you. I thought I would never say this a couple years ago. We have to adopt some of their tactics, right? If they're going to ballot harvest on the Democrat side, and in a lot of places like California and places like that, it's totally legal to harvest ballots. We've been, ideologically opposed to it in the Republican Party for a long time, and have resisted doing things like that because we just don't. We think it leads to fraud. It leads to. But I think if that's the rules that we're going to have to play by, then we have to play by those rules as well. And I think we have to go out and be aggressive in those areas as well, and get people registered, and and get their ballots back, and get them, whatever we have to do. I mean, I'm not, certainly not implying that we do anything fraudulent. I think that each person just has one vote. But I think if we can encourage people that typically don't vote, even to the extent that we're helping them with their ballots and getting their ballots and getting the ballots in their hands so they can fill them out themselves, which I don't think that happens on the Democrat side. I think other people fill those ballots out for them at times, and that's certainly illegal. No one should be doing that on either side of the aisle. But I think we have to be aggressive about trying to do some of the stuff that is legal in some of these states that they've taken advantage of.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome to come here anytime you want to. We'll clear the schedule and give you an opportunity here. You always have a voice here. You have a lot of support from our listeners as well, and I'm sure I'll be getting several more texts throughout the day. Well,
like I said, Ricky, my goal was not to come here and besmirch anybody, or talk negatively about anybody, including the law enforcement officers that were involved in this. But I'm in a position now where I can't really tell the story without talking about the things that I think went wrong as well. And so that's just what I'm trying to do here. And I'm just I'm not looking to do anything beyond this. I just wanted to get kind of set this story straight, and I appreciate you give me the opportunity to do that, and give me the opportunity to apologize for the part of it that I was not happy with, which is the language I used. So thank you.
Well, we forgive you for that.
Thank you.
All right. And,
won't happen again.
We thank the Lord for you. We pray for you. We pray for your health and Jane's health, and energy and wisdom to do what you're doing, and we believe you're doing a good job. We thank God for it, and thank God for the people you've surrounded yourself with.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Ronny Jackson, our congressman here in his 13th district, and we'll be talking to him again on a future visit here on the Kingdom Keys Network.